Work health and safety WHS laws and regulations have been put in place. These laws and regulations are meant to guide and help business owners, employers, contractors and labourers ensure safety measures in their respective workplaces while performing their tasks. A workplace where workers are not exposed to dangers that may result to serious injuries or illnesses are generally considered to be a low-risk workplace, while those which does expose workers to such hazards are considered to be a high-risk workplace. In both kinds of workplaces, there is the need to provide effective and immediate first aid to workers that have been injured or become sick due to work-related incidents or conditions. So what is first aid? In the Code of Practice, first aid is defined as the immediate treatment or care given to a person suffering from an injury or illness until more advanced care is provided or the person recovers. The personnel that administers first aid is required to complete a nationally accredited training course before he or she can be recognised as a competent first aider. First aid facilities and equipment should also be in place according to the number of workers, nature of activities, types of hazards, location and size of the workplace. This includes first aid kits, first aid rooms and signs, health centres and clean water supplies, amongst others. So who has the duty to ensure first aid? According to the WHS Act, the primary duty to ensure first aid in the workplace lies on the person conducting a business or undertaking, PCBU. In relation to first aid, the WHS regulations obliges the PCBU to provide and ensure the accessibility of first aid equipment and facilities to workers, and train a sufficient number of first aiders and ensure their accessibility to all workers. Now, officers or supervisors in the workplace also have the duty to ensure first aid. They should exercise due diligence to make sure that the WHS Act and regulations are complied with in the workplace. Also, workers have the duty to ensure health and safety for themselves as well as that of others. They must comply with the health and safety measures that are in place and encourage others to do the same. So how do you determine the first aid requirements in the workplace? The PCBU must consider the following in order to determine the appropriate first aid requirements in the workplace. Number one, the nature of work and workplace hazards. The risks and hazards in the workplace vary greatly depending on the work environment. Offices, shops or libraries are considered to be low-risk workplaces since these do not expose workers to serious injuries or illnesses. On the other hand, construction sites, factories and mining sites are examples of high-risk workplaces. These work environments are saturated with risks and hazards from exposure to powerful machineries, chemical substances or confined workspaces. First aid requirements for these places will consequently vary to meet the specific needs. So number two is the size and location of the workplace. If the workplace is a large area, first aid facilities and equipment may be located in more than one area or may be situated centrally. The distance between the workplace and hospitals and ambulance services should also be considered. For remote work areas, it is very important that a reliable communication system is established. Number three, the number of workers in a workplace. The larger the workforce, the more first aiders and first aid kits that will be needed. Additionally, it should also be considered whether the workforce are in a low-risk or high-risk workplace. So, low-risk workplaces, you generally need one first aider for every 10 to 50 workers, two for every 51 to 100 workers, and then an additional one first aider for every additional 100 workers. Now, high-risk workplaces definitely need one for up to 50 workers, two for up to 26 to 50 workers, and an additional first aider for every additional 50 workers. So what should a first aid kit contain? The contents of the first aid kit may vary from one workplace to another as there are varying factors to be considered. However, a first aid kit may generally contain basic equipment for administering first aid for injuries such as cuts, scratches, punctures or splinters, muscular sprains, first-degree burns, which are minor, major bleeding wounds, injuries to the eyes, broken bones from falls or slips, or shock. So what are the types of first aid training? All first aiders should be trained from a registered training organisation, RTO, that is nationally recognised. Statements of attainment will be issued by the RTO once the first aiders have successfully completed the training. So training competencies aim to equip first aiders to be able to do the following. Number one, provide first aid. This type of training training will teach first aiders to respond to common injuries or illnesses that may be life-threatening, which includes the use of a CPR first aider who will also manage the incident until further medical assistance may arrive. Number 2, provide advanced first aid and advanced first aid response. This type of training provides first aid to high-risk workplaces. Additional competencies are required to apply an advanced first aid response. Number 3, manage first aid services and resources. This type of training provides competencies to administer advanced first aid as well as manage first aid rooms. Number 4, provide first aid in remote situations. This type of training provides competencies required to apply first aid in an isolated situation or remote workplace where access to emergency services may be delayed. High-risk workplaces may require first aid officers and supervisors to undergo and successfully complete the occupational first aid training. For more information about working in the construction industry, make sure you visit our website whitecardinfo.com.au.